The committee will come to order. Pursuant to notice, I now call up the resolution H.R.S. 28 expressing the sense of the House that the United States should declare its support for the independence of Kosovo for purposes of markup and move its favorable recommendation to the House without objection. The resolution will be considered read open for amendment at any point. The chair yields himself 5 minutes for purposes of presenting a statement. International attention to the Balkans region has been diverted since September 11, 2001, and the ensuing wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Sadly and regrettably, the region exploded into a new round of violence in March of this year. Since I've been chairman, this committee has attempted to address through a number of hearings the continuing and underlying inadequacies of international policies in the Balkans, policies which were to a large extent imposed on the region. In 1999, NATO intervened militarily in Serbia in what was the first NATO military operation in the history of the alliance. It's easy to understand why the final status of Kosovo was left undetermined at the time. The current status of Kosovo is governed by UN Security Council Resolution 1244, passed in June 1999, at the end of the Kosovo conflict. The resolution authorizes an international military and civilian presence in Kosovo, the duration of which is at the direction of UN Security Council. The NATO-led peacekeeping force, KFOR, Kosovo Force, is charged with maintaining a secure environment, while the UN mission in Kosovo, UNMIK, is given the chief role in administering Kosovo on a provisional basis. The resolution provides for an interim period of autonomy for Kosovo of undefined length until negotiations on the future status of the province takes place. UNMIK is tasked with gradually transferring its administrative responsibilities to elected interim autonomous government institutions while retaining an oversight role. In a future stage, UNMIK will oversee the transfer of authority from the interim autonomous institutions to permanent ones after Kosovo's future status is determined. UNSC Resolution 1244 provides little insight into how the status issue should be resolved, saying only that it should be determined by an unspecified political process. In the aftermath of the violence in March of this year, confidence in the ability of the UN to administer Kosovo reached a new low. Through the leadership of the U.S. administration in close cooperation with our European allies, the aforementioned political process resolving the status issue has been re-energized and reinvigorated over the past 6 months. The goal of this process is to achieve the true goal of nation building, to return power to competent, responsible, and representative local government. In the meantime, political developments within Serbia have improved considerably. President Boris Tadic was elected president of Serbia in June of this year by a majority of Serbian voters who chose his path of reform and opportunity over radicalism, isolation, and conflict. And just this past weekend, Serbia completed democratic, free, and fair municipal elections. President Tadic visited Washington in July of this year, met with the committee members. He recently wrote me a letter expressing his concern about how sensitive the political situation is within Serbia and how the wrong signal could potentially upset the delicate political process in the region and perhaps even participation of all groups in the upcoming October 23rd Kosovo elections. Today, committee consideration of this resolution does not condone the violence of this past March in the region. I condemn the violence. This resolution conveys that the status quo of the past 5 years is unacceptable. All sides must participate to engage in this most difficult political process to ensure that all Kosovars can create a future where they can live in security, prosperity, and freedom. That's why the committee is considering this resolution today, and that's why I support the resolution, and I yield to my friend, the ranking Democrat, Tom Lantos, for such remarks as he chooses to make.
Mr. Chairman, I'm convinced that the only way to address the problem of the political, economic, and social instability that continues to plague the Balkans, and the only way to prevent renewed violence in the region, is to grapple with the issue of Kosovo's final status. It is my belief that the sooner we deal with that problem, the better it will be for the peace and stability of the region. Since our successful military action against the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia in 1999, the international community has joined Kosovars in rebuilding their country, revitalizing their economy, establishing democratic institutions of self-government, and healing the scars of war. However, progress in Kosovo, which currently is a United Nations protectorate, is being held up by uncertainty about its political status. Under former Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic, the Yugoslav government dismantled Kosovo's political structure. Before the breakup of the former Yugoslavia, Kosovo was an autonomous province. Under Milosevic, Kosovars were subjected to systematic persecution and discrimination. Ethnic Albanians were replaced by Serbs in most jobs. Serb-owned firms took over Albanian-owned companies, and Albanians were prohibited from purchasing or improving property. I traveled to Kosovo beginning in the 80s on numerous occasions, and I personally witnessed this tragedy time and time again. I talked to a large group of Kosovars at the capital city of Pristina on the main square. These men, women, and children greeted my wife and me with joy, which was not aimed at us, it was aimed at the United States and the freedom we represented. Serbian policemen were beating the crowd at the edges, all around the square, while Kosovars were chanting, USA, USA. I'll never forget that scene. All of us watched in horror the mass devastation of ethnic Albanians by Serbian paramilitary forces with the enthusiastic support of the Milosevic government. Kosovars were killed, their homes were burned and pillaged, and hundreds of thousands of them were made homeless. All of us remember the scenes as they were pushed out of their homeland where they had lived in centuries. Old ladies carrying their grandchildren in their arms. Pregnant women being pushed across the border. It was one of the most horrific sights of Europe since the Holocaust. The United States, with the assistance of many of our European allies, were able to halt the tragedy and help to stabilize the situation. Today, as we meet here, Kosovo is under United Nations protection. But of course, the problems that remain are extremely serious. Unemployment is over 60%. The economic crisis increases the likelihood that Kosovars, half of them are under the age of 25, will either enter criminal networks or will leave to find work abroad in order to survive. The perpetuation of these economic difficulties heightens the potential for continued instability in the Balkans, and it undermines our national security interests in this important region. Achieving genuine long-term political and economic stability requires reconstruction assistance. But just as importantly, it demands a resolution of the political status of Kosovo. International private investment, loans from the World Bank are delayed or not even considered because of questions about the long-term status of Kosovo. Mr. Chairman, you expressed the link with special eloquence in a speech in December of 2002 when you said, and I quote Chairman Hyde, "There will be no jobs without peace and stability in Kosovo, but there will be no peace and stability without independence." Under the Yugoslav Constitution of 1974, Kosovo was equivalent in most ways to the other constituent republics of Yugoslavia: Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, Macedonia. As an autonomous province, Kosovo exercised the same powers as the other republics. It had its own parliament, it had its own high court, it had its central bank, it had its own police service, and it had its local defense force. Through constitutional change, Kosovo was recognized as a constituent element of the Yugoslav federal system. Now, when Slovenia and Croatia demanded independence in 1991, Western European governments, including our own Department of State, opposed recognizing the right of those republics to self-determination. I want to repeat this, Mr. Chairman, because we are saying the same State Department dilatory, meaningless statements issued with respect to Kosovo that they issued with respect to Slovenia, Croatia, and all the others. I remember marching with a large group of my Croatian friends on Union Square in San Francisco, demanding that the State Department allow Croatia to become independent. Croatia is an independent country. It will become a member of NATO, it will become a member of the European Union. Slovenia already is. What we are talking about is an interim solution, because at the end of the rainbow in Europe, there is the European Union. And just as Slovenia is a member of the European Union, I hope, Mr. Chairman, and I know, Mr. Chairman, that the other former constituent republics of Yugoslavia will all become members of the European Union. We simply cannot go on with this status quo of continued subservience and subjugation of the Albanian people of Kosovo. The State Department sent another letter this time, as it did 12 years ago, saying, "This is not the time." Well, let me tell the State Department and its representatives in the room that no couple is ever ready for parenthood, and no nation is ever ready for nationhood. Yet couples have had children, and groups of people have formed nations since time immemorial. So these boilerplate phrases that this is not the time, we have heard this ad nauseum and ad infinitum. Eventually, Mr. Chairman, our government and the rest of the world acknowledged the independence of Slovenia and Croatia, and the independence of Bosnia-Herzegovina and Macedonia. Let me mention parenthetically that Kosovo has a larger population than either Slovenia or Macedonia. 2.5 million people fully capable of moving towards independence. We have found, Mr. Chairman, that self-determination for those nations has involved not so much a change of borders as a change in the status of existing borders. The lines on the map remain the same, but their status is upgraded from a constituent republic within a federation that no longer exists to an independent nation. This has contributed to the stability and progress of these countries. Kosovo is entitled to the same treatment. There must be no double standard. Now let me now touch upon a highly sensitive issue. The United States is accused by its opponents in the media and elsewhere, like Al Jazeera, that we discriminate against Muslim entities. Kosovo is an overwhelmingly Muslim entity. It has a significant Christian population, but the bulk of the people are Muslims. Yesterday, the European Union took a historic step, opening the door to Turkey's eventual admission as a full member of the European Union. It would be a disgrace if the International Relations Committee of the United States House of Representatives, using whatever obfuscation we might choose to do, would now deny an overwhelmingly Muslim European entity the right to move towards independence. This would be a great victory for all of our enemies everywhere. It would be a great victory for Al Jazeera. It would be a great victory which are saying that we are witnessing a new crusade against Islam. That is the last thing we are engaged in. We want to integrate the people of Kosovo into Europe. They are valuable and useful citizens, just as they are when they come to New York or Los Angeles or anywhere else in this country. The people of Kosovo must understand that the human rights of the Serbian minority must be protected without a moment's lapse. The Serbian citizens living in Kosovo are entitled to precisely the same protection that the Kosovar citizens are. But we have received this assurance from the Kosovar leadership. I urge all of my colleagues to join our distinguished chairman, Chairman Hyde, and me in supporting this resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lantos. The chair will entertain motions to strike the last word. The chair recognizes Mr. Burke.
First of all, Mr. Chairman, I have the highest regard for you and Mr. Lantos, and I think Mr. Lantos knows that. He and I have become very good friends over the years. I don't believe and I hope that no one will consider my vote, which is going to be against the resolution, to be one that's anti-Muslim. I've spoken at probably 50 mosques around the country. I have a lot of friends that are Muslims, and I believe that problems that we have worldwide with Muslims and Muslim leaders need to be discussed and worked out in an equitable way. So I want to say that at the outset. Now, Milosevic is no longer the dictator of Serbia. We had a meeting here with Boris Tadic about, 3 or 4 or 5 weeks ago. I chaired that hearing, that meeting. And he committed to me, along with the members of his administration, his desire to reach out to every governmental entity surrounding Serbia to try to work out their differences so that everything would be resolved in a peaceful way and the problems would be solved without more conflict. I am aware of the ethnic cleansing that's taken place on both sides, on all sides. We're all aware of that, and it's been a real tragedy. It's not confined to one ethnic group or another. It's been going on all over. Serbian churches have been burned, and Serbian people have been killed, and Muslim people have been killed in Kosovo. I mean, I understand all that. But our State Department, I want to read a little bit of this letter, and then, if I might, Mr. Chairman, I would like to have a representative of the State Department, if they want to illuminate a little bit on this issue. I believe Kathleen Stevens is here with us representing the State Department, maybe make a comment or two. But let me just read a little bit of this. The letter, and I don't know if all my colleagues have seen it, but here's what it says. I am writing to express our concern over H-Res 28, which would declare the House in favor of independence for Kosovo. Such a resolution at this pivotal moment will undermine the important progress toward peace and freedom we and our allies are making in the region. The next few months will be key to moving toward our envisioned mid-2005 discussion of Kosovo's future status. Since the terrible violence in March, we have worked with our partners in the contact group to re-energize the UN and support the reconstruction of damaged homes and schools. We are strongly engaged to ensure progress on minority rights and security while promoting transfer of significant responsibilities to Pristina's elected leaders after the October 23rd Assembly elections. And listen to this. When I met with Kosovo's leaders last week in Pristina, they welcomed this approach. I mean, just last week he met with these leaders and they concurred. In a courageous step, Serbian President Boris Tadic on October 5th called for Kosovo Serbs to participate in the October elections despite serious opposition, and there have been calls for his impeachment because of that. So he's keeping his commitment to do everything he can to reach out and to make sure that every party in that area is participating and working together. And then they say, I respectfully request that your committee not act on this resolution at this time. With your support, the United States can and will continue to play a key role in moving toward a future for Kosovo and for the broader region that is in the interests of all, a region family on the path to Euro-Atlantic integration and the realization of a Europe whole, free, and at peace. I think that says it all. We all want a resolution of the problem. The question is the timing and how we do it. I'm afraid right now the State Department, it's not just the State Department, it's the National Security Council, the European Subcommittee, Ms. Davis is opposed to it, the Embassy of Serbia and Montenegro is opposed to it. There's just a whole host of opposition. And while I have the highest regard for my good colleague, Mr. Lantos, I think this is the wrong resolution at the wrong time. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would respectfully request that we ask the State Department to add any additional information they'd like to give to it.
I believe that we are dragging our feet in an area where we say one thing, but we mean another. And I trust that my colleagues will join me and support this great resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rohrbacher.
I'll have to note that Mr. Lantos' observation that, there's never a time when you can become a parent and be absolutely certain that you're prepared for it. That really struck home here.
I wasn't looking at you, Dana.
But I'd like to compliment Elliot Engel and you, Mr. Lantos, and the chairman for the hard work that you put in over a decade. I remember a decade ago going to meetings with Stenny O'Hare and Elliot and the gang and there was a horrible story going on there. We were meeting people in various parts of the Capitol who were here telling us about these horrible murders and repression that was going on in Kosovo and it was and I think that it's time for us to end this conflict. It's time for us to bring some peace to that area, and the way we do it is by making a decision and not putting off a decision. I support this resolution strongly for practical and philosophical reasons. In the practical arena, we have troops. We still have troops in this area, and we will continue to have troops in this area until a decision is made. And no one here can deny that. If we simply put this off, 5 years from now, we will continue to have our troops stationed there. And this is not a time when we should be using the energies and resources of our own military in a place where they could be operating independently, have a democratic government, and be able to function without us. The status quo, with our troops there, and the continuing status quo, not making a decision, is a cesspool of stagnation, which is going to bring all the wrong elements to the fore. What floats to the top when you have a situation like this, where you don't permit people to have a strong economy because you have uncertainty. And so people will live in poverty, and when they live in poverty, they will turn to extremists. We don't need that. We can now move forward and try to have reconciliation and try to find harmony, just like they found in Croatia. The Serbs didn't want the Croatians to be independent either. And No, it's time that we make a decision. It's time the Western world makes a decision that the people of Kosovo have a right to determine their own destiny. And when we make that decision, freedom will work, liberty will work. It will bring harmony. It will not bring disharmony. And until that decision is made, until people are able to get out of this quagmire, there will continue to be disharmony, and there will continue to be fractionalism, and there will continue to be hatred, and there will always be a threat hanging over us. So let's get moving. Let's work on a practical way, and the practical way is to let the people there make their own decision about what their status is. And that's what leads to the philosophical reason that I am in favor of this, and that is, we Americans believe that all people have a right to determine their own destiny through the ballot box. And from the time we started down this path, we were told, well, that will cause all kinds of disruption in society, and there's all kinds of potential downsides to letting people control their own destiny through the ballot box. Well, no. Freedom brings stability. We will not have stability until there is freedom. And the people of that part of the world, the Muslims of Kosovo, the Kosovars have a right to determine their own destiny, just like the American people have a right, and just like the people everywhere have a right. And finally, let us look at the message that we are sending. By supporting this resolution, we are being consistent with our view that democracy is not just for, Christian Europeans and Americans. It is for the Muslim world as well. And where people are dying in Iraq now to set that principle, to make sure that we can institute a democratic government there. Well, how can we be against a democratic government in Kosovo if we, while we are fighting for democracy in Iraq? So let's send a message to the Muslim world. We believe in the right to determine your destiny through the ballot box. We believe in democracy. We believe that freedom will bring harmony into society and permit people to live together. We believe in respecting the rights. Once we respect the rights of the majority of the people there, the Kosovars, they then will respect the rights of their minority, the Serbian minority.
Gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Schiff.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity to speak on the bill, and I find myself in a point of rare disagreement with the chair and the ranking member. I don't quarrel with many of the points that have been made about the desirability of Kosovar independence, but I do have concerns about the alacrity with which this bill has been brought before the committee, the failure of the full committee to even have an oversight hearing on a matter as significant as declaring our support for the independence of Kosovo. I, for one, would like to hear what the Secretary of State's office has to say about this in more detail than a single-sided letter that was drafted yesterday. Now, I know Mr. Burton requested that we allow State Department representative here today to speak, and the Chairman correctly pointed out this is not an oversight hearing, it's a markup. But that begs the question of why isn't this an oversight hearing on a matter of this importance? I'd like to know in more detail what effect this declaration would have on the ongoing discussions in the region. Are we going to undermine some of the reform-minded leadership there? And I don't have full answers to those questions, and in fact the committee analysis, which is usually lengthy and sophisticated, in this case is a one-sided summary sheet. And I just think an issue of this level of importance deserves more thought and more attention than we're giving it here today.
Will my friend yield for a moment?
Yes, I'd be glad to yield.
Long before you joined the Congress, Ms. Schiff, we have had countless hearings on this issue, and the record of all of these hearings is available. This is not a snap judgment of Chairman Hyde and myself. We have been working on the issue of Kosovo independence for 2 decades, and the documents are all there. The issues have not changed. May I also say that this is not a new issue in Central and Eastern Europe. When you go down just 50 feet from here is the statue of Louis Kossuth, who in 1848 told the Austro-Hungarian monarchy that the Hungarians don't want to live under Austrian tutelage. That was over 150 years ago. These people are no less entitled to their own independence than the Slovenians, the Croatians, and every one of the other ethnic entities. They happen to be Muslim. That's the only difference. And in today's climate, that should be all the more reason that we support their right. I thank my friend for yielding.
And I thank the gentleman, and believe me, I would never compare my experience to my colleague from Northern California, who I respect and admire. The problem, I think, is that not only has the gentleman from California been working on this long before I came to Congress, indeed, the gentleman has been working on it long before a majority of the members of this committee have been in Congress, and we're being asked to vote on it today. And it's not for the edification of the chair or the ranking member that I suggest that we have an oversight hearing, but rather for the rest of us that have not been working on this for decades and would benefit from hearing what our State Department has to say, what the witnesses in favor of a declaration of support for independence have to say. And I don't at all take issue with the fact that this has been a persistent issue for a very long time, but this committee has not done the oversight it should do on this bill. And given that the State Department has come out in opposition, I think we should spend more time finding out why and make an informed judgment. It may be after that that I would speak in support of the measure, but I am concerned that we might undercut the very cause that's being advanced, and I would urge the chairman and my colleagues to schedule an oversight hearing and put the bill back on the calendar so that we all might give it the due diligence that it really deserves. And I yield back the balance of my time.
I do too believe that this may be premature. I think it should come back for a more thorough discussion. I certainly support Mr. Lantos in what he is attempting to do, but it seems to me that it may be better to postpone it at this time. It may send the wrong message. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there are votes being called. I would entreat the committee to come back after the vote. We have one amendment at least, and this is a very important issue to an awful lot of people. So if you don't mind, make the effort. Yes. I'm advised by the parliamentarian to have Mr. Burton offer his amendment, so it's pending while we come back.
Great.
The wisdom of that is lost on me. Mr. Burton, you have an amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment, yes.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by Mr. Berger of Indiana. Strike the preamble and insert the following.
I ask unanimous consent that further reading of the amendment be dispensed with.
Mr. Chairman, I will not ask the amendment be read. I'll go into the details of it when we return.
The committee will stand in recess. Please return so we may dispose of this issue. The chair understands that there's been some further discussion of this matter between members of the committee and during the votes on the floor. in order to give the committee an opportunity to look at this matter carefully, we will postpone further consideration of the matter. And I yield to Mr. Lantos.
Mr. Chairman, I think you're making, as usual, a wise decision, and I fully support it.
Thank you very much. I want to assure the committee and other interested parties that this issue is very much alive and will be gone into, certainly in the next Congress, in detail and in depth. So this postponement is by request of members who want to study this a little more deeply, and I think that procedure is acceptable. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Burke?
your wisdom is only exceeded by your good looks.
Does the gentleman require additional time? Is there any objection? If not, the committee stands adjourned.
All we heard today was there was no argument about the substance of this piece of legislation. The only argument was against what? Against the process. We don't know about this. We haven't heard about it. We don't remember any hearings
Despite
on
the
this.
May 21st, 2003
Well,
complete
all these people-
Marvin,
committee
you should
hearings.
interview
him for Voice of America.
And
This
is Congressman Rohrabacher.
I'm
May
sure.
21st.
Yeah, but I'm sure that these people. By the way, I had forgotten about that hearing. Obviously, I didn't even remember the hearing. We're doing a dozen things a day here, and this is. But I do remember in the back going, "Hey, if you set the same standards for the United States, we wouldn't even be independent." I remember that.
Yeah.
But
May 21st.
so if I remember that, if I barely remember that, these people don't remember it all. So they were discussing process. So by saying there was no vote, all the
A full committee hearing, they had one.
was it 1 year?
May
was
20,
it this
it was
year?
May 23rd.
This year?
No, May
So
of
was it,
2003.
you mean in one session can you have two hearings? Yeah, we've had lots of hearings on different
So
bills.
technically
Yeah.
you're saying we should have had another one before this vote?
No, technically what they were saying is that it's so long ago that they didn't remember the issue, and this is a surprise to them.
I see.
So when you're not prepared for something and the State Department's telling you it's going to be harmful, they didn't know about it. You know, like I've been there, I know about it. So when the State Department says something foolish, I'll say, "Hey, that's foolish." But they haven't been there, so they can't say
But
that.
Lantos is also right that it's been 2 decades of discussion of this issue. This is not new to the committee in any way.
No, not the
And
committee,
I
but
just-
it's new to these people, and new to the members of the committee. So.
Many members of this committee have been informed by us and other people over a long period of time. That's why I think that your initial point about, or I forget, maybe somebody else made it, that saying it's the wrong time is a typical excuse when we don't want a form of obfuscation. I don't think time is going to matter. I think if we had a full committee hearing next week, it still wouldn't matter. There would be another reason.
The important thing here is whether or not whether the substance of their argument is accurate or not, or correct or not, but whether or not they are offering an argument that can actually prevail. And the substance of their argument was wrong. I mean, the fact is we do know about the issues there, but that wasn't what was important. They were arguing about the process. It was ringing to other members, and thus it was good for the chairman to say, okay, this is a decision based on complaints about the process, not about the bill.
Did you find it interesting that the person who most opposes this bill, Congressman Burton, who has plenty of substantial arguments to offer from his perspective, didn't offer them at all? Wasn't that interesting?
Well,
he couldn't say, I didn't have time, my homework hasn't been done. He's been part of the
Well, he did
propaganda
offer a
machine.
substitute, right? I don't know what was in his
yes,
substitute.
but he didn't publicly express for the members of the committee his position.
Well, I hate to personalize it with Dan. People, everybody has their different things they're interested in, and
I understand that, but he didn't offer substance, is what I'm saying. He, too, talked about process when he himself has been working on this consistently.
Right.
So that's why I'm saying I think the process was being used.
I don't know what was in his substitute, however. His substitute might have had substantive changes, And we didn't get around to
But he
that.
only complained about process.
That's right. No one here complained about the substance at all. They were afraid to take on that argument because, frankly,
They wouldn't win it.
Well, 3 or 4 of us were there, beating them in the face, saying, "Hey, you're going to stand up for principles, or aren't you going to stand up for principles?" And this way, by not standing up for what the principles of our country supposedly believes in, we're actually doing something that doesn't work either. It's not even pragmatic, much less philosophically right.
Your arguments for self-determination and independence were great, and you could see that they were echoed by the chairman, the ranking member.
Oh yeah, sure.
And others. So it's a shame that we couldn't have that substantive discussion, but here we are.
Well,
So-
the battle is
but
not.
I'm happy we had this session.
The battle is not over.
No.
The chairman made the right decision that saying in light of the complaints about process, we're going to hold off until there is a process which everybody's comfortable with, or at least everybody cannot complain about, and then we'll have a vote on the substance.
Don't you think this is a mandate for us to start the process to get another hearing and to have the State Department
No,
review?
absolutely, and it's
Yeah.
also a mandate. This is a mandate for the people who feel strongly on this issue to be contacting the members of this committee at home in their home districts and to talk to them personally about what the specific real issues are and what really is being decided. So that's the way the democratic process works. You listen to the people at home more than you listen to them. When somebody just comes into your office and they're not related to your district.
Okay.
Congressman, will the timing actually be any better in the 109 as far as you're going to have
It is.
coming in?
The timing is good today. The timing would have been better. Would have been better last year, and the timing today is better than it will be next year. But the important thing is to move forward as soon as possible to end what is just a quagmire of inaction, and where there are millions of people caught in the stagnation of indecision, so that their lives and the lives of their families are suffering. And we got to get some movement, and movement will then break loose all kinds of human activities that will improve their condition and actually create more stability in the end.
Do you think there's any chance of getting to this in November? It's already been.
This won't be done in a lame duck.
Yeah. No, we'll set it up. I think we should start at the beginning of 2005.
Yeah, well, if next time, it depends on who controls the body. If the Democrats control the body, Tom Lantos obviously will be chairman of the International Relations Committee, and
Henry will be, won't he?
will be ranking member. So we still have the 2 top dogs.
But Henry
Then
will
you got
also be.
then you got a few barking dogs like me.
Without which we would not be able to go on.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll see you
Thank you.
guys. Have a take care.
I also wanted to.
I know.
6
The thing that, do you realize what Tana actually said? Tana
Is that right?
didn't say that you won't support the election. Did you hear the second part of the sentence? 3 months later,
Okay.
if we do not get Belgrade's plan in Kosovo, I will ask all of you to resign from the assembly.
And
Our great Democrat.
yeah, no, exactly. I think we're headed in the right direction. And I think on this one, there's still a little more work we need to do with the committee, and I think that's why it was better to not sort of force it to
Tell my
a
wife
vote,
there's hope
because
in the future.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, we're
Could you
working
hold up
really hard.
just one second?
we can introduce it immediately, and what we probably should do is take the bill, same bill, and drop it
same
in
bill,
just
drop it in.
so that we know
In
that
fact,
it's
believing
it's
we
there.
can add some of the changes I
Yeah, if you had some,
I made
some
some
of your
that I think will
changes
help
were
you.
useful, and
Yeah.
we'll do those
Add
tweaks
those.
and then drop it in
Right.
and drop it in,
So,
January
do you
4th
think
or
we
something
could get
like
it
that.
in February or not?
Part of it's going to depend on how long it's going to take the committee to work.
Go wherever the action is. Stay by. And
Well, here we are again in the House of Representatives. This is the committee room of the full Committee of International Relations for the U.S. House of Representatives. I think it's important that we're standing here. We just had what they referred to as a markup session, full committee, for House Resolution 28, and that would be the sense of Congress, their support for the independence for Kosovo. And what we heard were incredibly important statements by the chairman, Henry Hyde, who introduced this resolution with the ranking member, the #1 Democrat, Tom Lantos, who again gave a very strong statement for why the United States, it's in the United States' interest to support the independence for Kosovo now. It wasn't only the chairman and the ranking member, we had Congressman Rohrbacher and so many others say that. But obviously we have other members, some new members, who felt that they needed to have more time to study this issue since we had the hearing May 21 of 2003, and here we are already in October 2004, so the vote wasn't taken today. But the importance of today's session is that the Albanian American Civic League and the Albanian American community, especially the board of the league, people like Marsh Natsulai, Luan Bakola, and so many others, with the tremendous day-to-day, night and day work of Shirley Cloys as our Balkan Affairs Advisor, we have kept the most important issue for the Albanian people on the agenda in the U.S. Congress at a very difficult time. At a time, one, that the State Department still has its 20-year, and I started this 20 years ago almost, feelings that we should not support any movement for independence for the Albanian people. We've heard that during the hearing in 2003, and we heard it again today. But the fact is, they were not able to cancel this markup. The Serbian people now have their own lobby working in Congress. They have now a Serbian caucus sponsored by the Serbian Unity Congress. And there are some congressmen here who have Serbian constituents, and they're saying what the State Department is saying, that we need to have standards before status, which obviously is not the right approach, and the resolution says no. Standards before status will not work. What we need is independence now, because Kosovo needs the status to borrow the money from the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, the European Fund, Bank for Reconstruction, so it can rebuild the infrastructure and attract the private investment. Why? 70% of the people are unemployed. It's that simple. Look at our election here for president. The issues of the economy come up all the time, that the president may not be creating enough jobs. Well, imagine Albanians, where there's 70% unemployment in Kosovo, almost 50% unemployment in Albania. How are these people, especially with half the population under the age of 25, how are they going to support themselves and their family? Especially when they're not allowed to go to Europe. They're not allowed to come here. And as Congressman Hyde has said many times, what are we going to do if we don't act now on final status for independence? Create another Gaza Strip in the middle of Europe? That would be wrong. So the importance of today is that our league, our lobby, the Albanian American Civic League, with the support of the Albanian American community, especially those on our board, we have shown that we can put on the agenda of Congress at a time the State Department is not supporting us, and at a time we have a blistering war in Iraq with many Americans being killed, and the problems with nuclear proliferation in Iran and North Korea, and the problems of the Palestinians and the Israelis not yet solved. We got the full committee of the House of Representatives, the International Committee of the House of Representatives, to consider the issue of independence for Kosovo once again. So I am very happy that we're here, especially in this room. As you can see the symbolism when you have Congressman Hyde, the chairman. There's his picture up there. He's still the chairman, but the former chairman who introduced the bill, by the way, before Hyde did, is Ben Gilman, and there he is right there as well. So this is kind of a museum of liberation for the Albanian people, because it was in this very room that I, as a congressman, introduced the first resolution for the Albanian people of the former Yugoslavia, Kosovo, back in 1986. With that, I want to turn to Shirley, who has done such a marvelous job. You know, getting to this day was not just waiting for the days to go by to be here. We had to work very, very hard to contact every member of this committee and fax them information, contact their international relations staff that gives the advice for the congressman and the congresswoman. And we did that work in the last 2 weeks so that we could get to this point today. So I want Shirley to make a statement because without her, we wouldn't be here.
This is the 15th year that the Civic League has been working in Washington, and it's the 5th year of breaking the silence around Kosovo. We came out of the war in 1999. The international community told Kosovo, you must not act on the independence of Kosovo. You must not even talk about the independence of Kosovo. Joe and I and a delegation from the Civic League went to post-war Kosovo on numerous occasions. By the year 2001, it was clear we were going to have to break the silence. We could not go along with this international request. In 2003, this resolution, HRES 28 now, asking the United States to declare the independence of Kosovo now, was introduced. It broke the silence. Immediately, the debate came to the surface. The international spotlight was once again on Kosovo. It has taken 2 years to get to this point. It is 5 years again after the war. And what do we have? We have a Kosovo held hostage politically, socially, and economically because of its lack of final status. We have more than 2 million people suffering. And the question we have to ask ourselves in the international community, because it is the international community that has, in effect, taken over the administration and the security of Kosovo, are we going to be complicit in a new process? We were complicit before in not stopping Milosevic for 10 years. 350,000 people died. 4 million people were displaced. Now we are complicit in another way. As Joe said, 70% unemployment in Kosovo. 70% of the population under the age of 30. No ability to get World Bank loans or other finances from the international community. No ability to create jobs, to create a future. Too many people in the international community, even in our U.S. Congress, want to talk about the violence that erupted in March. And it was not an orchestrated violence. It was violence that was manipulated by certain groups, but it was the outpouring of a society. Again, a minority of the society. But it was an outpouring arising from deprivation that's beginning to mount. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, where will this committee, which is the only bulwark against this effort to keep Kosovo subjugated and possibly even put Kosovars back under Serbia, where will this committee ultimately stand? It really rests in their hands because, as we have seen throughout the history of the Balkan conflict, even though Europe has shouldered a huge burden in post-war Kosovo, there will not be any direction towards freedom. There will not be new movement unless the United States takes a major role. And it was Congressman Rohrabacher today who said, we cannot freeze people, 2 million people in suffering. We have to move forward. The question is, where do we stand? Which side are you on? The greatest tragedy in post-war Kosovo, we saw it here today, was the effort to make a false equation between the perpetrators, the Milosevic regime that killed 15,000 Albanians and expelled 1 million, tortured, raped, murdered many more, burned down 250,000 homes and farms and religious sites. The effort to create a false equation between that act and what Kosovars did after the war, a very minority of people psychologically shattered, retaliating, and the events of March in which several hundred homes were destroyed, 30 religious sites, 11 Albanians dead, 8 Serbs dead. Tragic indeed, indefensible, perhaps, but there is no equation. And I would ask anyone who cares about peace in the Balkans not to succumb to the rationale that the March events are reason to deny Kosovo independence. It's exactly the opposite. Harmony and peace in the Balkans will proceed if Kosovo becomes an independent state. Serbia will become a democracy the day it ceases to be an occupier. Now we will see, where does this committee stand? Where does the United States stand at the beginning of 2005?
I just wanted to make another point that part of lobbying, maybe a very important part of it, is getting information on a very complex subject to the members. And Shirley and I were in Kosovo this summer, not only to have a petition drive so that we could show this committee how many Albanians wanted independence, and we got hundreds of thousands of signatures, But we also got this book because the Serbs were here with their archbishop with a book that was showing Albanians reportedly or reputedly burning down Serbian churches during the NATO war. Now, we know that many of those churches were occupied by the Serbian army and NATO was bombing them. But here's a book that no one has seen. It's a book that shows how many, and there's literally, I think, 200 mosques that were torched and burned and desecrated during that war. And no one has seen this in the Congress. So we had to get 50 copies of this brought back here so that we can get them to the members of this committee. Information is power. As Thomas Jefferson said, democracy, or information is the currency of democracy. And we, as Albanian Americans in our lobby, has to continue to provide good information, especially at a time that we don't have a strong government representing the Albanian people in the Balkans. We know that Albania is siding with our State Department and has kind of abandoned the Albanians outside of its borders, saying, in effect, that these are problems of Macedonia, Montenegro, and Kosovo. So where do the Albanian people have to look when they don't have any government to speak of in Kosovo that really has status or sovereignty, and they don't really control the governments in Macedonia and Montenegro where they're treated as second-class citizens? It may be getting better because of our pressure, but we need to continue our work as an independent voice for 7 million people in the Balkans, 7 million Albanians, because they don't have a government that stands up for them, certainly not here in Washington. And that's why it's important for the Albanian American Civic League to continue its work as an independent voice for the Albanian people, with me as a former U.S. congressman, a volunteer, and Shirley as another volunteer, a former publisher who is an expert on Balkan affairs. The both of us combined together with our board, who continues to give us information and funds so that we can continue to get our message out. And today, that's what we did once again. But instead of Shirley and DioGuardi speaking, it was Congressman Lantos, Congressman Hyde, Congressman Rohrabacher, and others saying what the Albanian people need to hear, that there are strong voices in Washington for their independence so they can get on with their lives.
And to all our brothers and sisters in the Balkans, I want to say that we are using our freedom to promote yours. But we want to thank you for using your commitment to inspire us and enable us to go on. Thank you, Kosovo. Thank you for 435,000 signers of the petition for our international campaign for the independence of Kosovo now. 535,000 and counting. And thank you to Albanians in Macedonia and Albania for taking up a cause that will go on around the world, and we indeed will succeed. Hvala me, Dediću.
Miropavša.